This video will describe the Not Present button in structural adjustment rules. Before I show you an example, let's look at the sentence here. We're in Esther 6:8:1. You should give to that man a robe that you wore. Okay, here we see the object noun phrase is heavy. It includes a relative clause. And the phrase structure rule for clauses knows that when the object noun phrase is heavy, it should be positioned at the end. But when we have a situation like this with an indirect object and a heavy object, we want to delete the two. You should give that man a robe that you wore. We don't want to say you should give to that man. Just, you should give that man a robe that you wore. So let's begin by writing a rule that will delete that preposition. So we'll come here. I'm going to make this rule based on noun phrases. When the direct object, NP, includes a relative clause, delete to in the indirect object phrase. So with the input editor, we can't specify semantic rules or anything. So now we'll come here, we'll say this is the object noun phrase. This is the indirect object noun phrase. And we can tag this clause as a relative clause. Only relative clauses can be inside noun phrases, so that's not really necessary, but it's okay. And let's put our word to in here. And now we'll delete that to. So when we have an object noun phrase that includes a relative clause and an indirect object, we will delete the to. So we save that, and now when we execute this rule, when we run the grammar, you should give that man a robe that you wore. That's a good sentence. But a problem arises when we come to a sentence like Joshua 21:21. If we generate this now, the Israelites also gave towns that the tribe of Ephraim owned, the other families that were Kohath's descendants. Okay, we see here, now there's an object noun phrase, and it includes a relative clause, but the indirect object noun phrase also includes a relative clause. So we want to modify that rule that we just wrote to say that the indirect object can't include a relative clause. So we'll open up that rule again, and now we'll say that this relative clause can't be there. If there is a relative clause in this indirect object noun phrase, then we don't want this rule to apply. We'll generate this verse again. The Israelites also gave towns that the tribe of Ephraim owned to the other families that were Kohath's descendants. That's a good sentence. So, to use this not present option, you always tag things in the input structure as not present. I'll include much more complicated and interesting examples. There will be another follow-up series when we actually build a grammar for English and then for Tagalog. And in those videos, I'll include much more interesting examples of not present. But the idea is you just tag constituents in the input structure as not present. And then, if those when that rule is being executed, if those constituents that are tagged as not present are found, then the rule won't apply.